Welcome to Let's Chat with Jim Parker. I appreciate you joining us today. We are a show that is for business brokers, business intermediaries, attorneys, SBA lenders, and of course, buyers and sellers of businesses. It's jam packed with a lot of information. I'm really excited because today we're going to be talking about AI. And for those of you business brokers out there, you know how it is. There's so many different things that we have to do. We have to talk to so many different buyers and sellers. We're constantly emailing. We're sending out confidentiality agreements. We're sending out so many different documentation. The closing process, there's just so many different steps to that. And we just wear so many hats throughout the process. And we're constantly juggling everything. And so I wanted to have a really special guest on today to talk about AI. And I didn't want somebody from the Silicon Valley or any tech head. I wanted somebody like us, somebody that's out there every day trying to make deals happen. And who's better to have on the show to talk about AI as a business broker than Trent Lee? And I'm sure all of you guys out there know who Trent Lee is. Trent, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, happy to be here. Always a good
Ec-
conversation when we're talking about automations and improvements and how to be better.
Hey, Trent, I always love chatting with you. Every time I talk to you, even if it's for 30 seconds, I feel like I walk away with a little bit of knowledge. And it's just, I just think you're an amazing broker. And I'm really grateful that you're a friend of mine. I really
Well, I feel
appreciate
the
it.
same way. We've known each other for a long time and we share ideas, and I think hopefully we both have become better for it.
Excellent. So, Trent, I think you were one of the first brokers that were testing the AI thing some time back, and you're really engaged in the technology with our industry, probably the most technology advanced business broker that I know out there. When was it that the first time that you realized this isn't a gimmick, this AI stuff, that could be really useful in our practice and not be taking away from the quality of service that we provide our buyers and sellers?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the before AI, there was just basic workflows and automations, or even old school systems, processes, procedures. I've always been a big fan of putting those implementations in place, the processes, the systems, the workflows. And AI has enhanced that and made it so much easier, more efficient to do those things. But even before AI, just the basic implementing some of these systems and these processes, procedures, these workflows has shown to be so beneficial to any business, not just our business in general, but any business overall. And so I've known and I've tried to use those type of systems, processes, procedures, workflows, automations, whatever you want to call them, as much as possible before AI came out. AI just really put it on steroids, made it so much easier to implement that stuff, and it broadened its capabilities.
You know, Chad, I got to say, I think about the business brokers that came before us, the generations before us, and you think about the brokers. This before we get into the AI stuff. You think about the business brokers that were working like in the early '90s, the '80s, and all that time before that. Just think, you didn't even have a cell phone.
Yeah,
You were
either.
doing things by fax because you didn't have the internet. But you wanted to go talk to somebody, you got in a car, you drove over there. Everything you did was think about how slow everything must have been for them. And then we have all this technology that had come through over the last 20 years with cell phones and the internet. Well, I guess internet about 30 years now, but we've got the internet, we've got cell phones and just all these different apps that you can use. Like today, business brokers should be extremely more productive than
Mhm.
the brokers in the 80s and 90s, early 90s and before that. And now we're on the verge of the AI boom, which I think is going to separate it even more. And to me, I don't know how you feel, Trent, but there are some brokers out there that are not even using simple automations yet that are not AI, just simple automations like NDAs automatically going out. And they're already behind. And that's what I'm worried about because with this whole AI coming through right now, it's going to separate it, I think, even more. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I love what you bring up, such a valid point. And honestly, I find that so encouraging because the business brokers of the 80s and 90s, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but the mediocre business brokers of the 80s and 90s could make a great living. And because where we're at now with technology, just imagine what a really good, efficient business broker could do. They can make life changing income rather than just the mediocre business broker that didn't have the technology that made a great living. Now, if you really put it, learn the task, learn the foundation of technology, some business brokers out there are just making life changing income from it. And it's so much more effective and less work than what people were doing 20, 30 years ago. And so the goal in AI and the way I approach this is I don't think anything, at least anytime soon, I'm not worried about AI replacing us because what we do is there's so much relationship building
Yeah.
and there's so much hands-on interpersonal relationship and negotiations and just face-to-face, knee-to-knee conversations. I'm not worried about AI replacing us, but what I think someone should be worried about is the business broker who doesn't learn how to replace it is going to get replaced by some other business broker who knows how to implement it because that business broker is going to be 3, 4, 5 times more productive than the business broker who isn't using AI. And so the goal, the way I look at this is AI is not there to replace me. It's there to enhance me.
I had to tell you, Trent, I don't think I could add anything to what you just said. I agree with everything you said, and you said it so well. What are you seeing out there? What do you think are the three top things that business brokers are wasting their time on the most a week? And I don't want to say waste time, but are the bottleneck in their practice.
Yeah.
They're wasting the time is not being utilized the best.
First off, and this isn't AI related, just basic technology, I can't even fathom how business brokers are functioning out there without a CRM. Just the basic CRM, even if it's not all that fancy. And I'm not here to necessarily say one CRM is better than the other. They all basically do for the most part. There are some that are better, but they all basically do a fine job. But if a business broker is working without a basic CRM, that's, and you've probably heard me say this before, Jim, that's like the equivalent of working from a typewriter.
Right.
Can you do it? Yeah, you can. If you want to just manually punch out a typewriter and get your white out and get things done, you can certainly do it. But how much more effective can you be with a high-end, up-to-date computer that can implement all this stuff? And so it's just the CRM is the absolute foundation. And then from there, you can build out workflows and automation and even some AI to then start taking away the bottleneck. And to your question, a very depends if we're talking about the buy side and the sell side, and we should and talk about both of them since we'll go into a little bit more detail on this. But on the buy side, business brokers should not be sending out NDAs manually. They shouldn't be countersigning. They shouldn't then be processing. They shouldn't be manually sending out the executive summary, the SIM. They shouldn't be having to follow up, chase people and find out what did you think? Did you review it? Do you have any questions? All of that can be automated. And on the sell side, one of my favorite automations, and we can dive into either one of these two, Jim, depending on what direction you want to go, or both of them if you
Mhm.
like. But one of my favorite automations on the sell side couples workflow automation and videos. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Before I was doing a lot of video and workflow automations, when I would meet with a potential seller, I'd go out and meet with them, which I'm not trying to use AI or automation to take that away. I want to get in front of a seller in person as soon as possible. But here's what really changed for me. When I used to go meet with sellers before any of this, I would sit down with them and we'd go through the financials and I would say, okay, here's what the adjusted earnings are. Here's what the market multiple is. Your business is worth X. And it was very much a my opinion versus their opinion, which was always, oh, my business is worth more than that. I would never sell it for that price. And
Yeah.
it was like these two countering opinions. And what's totally changed the dynamic of my conversation with sellers now is before I meet with them, because I have workflow automations in place and videos that I make before I meet with them, they get video content and education from me explaining what seller's discretionary earnings is, how is it different than EBITDA, explaining what market multiples are. I give them a tool, a resource where they can look up the market multiple for their industry. I teach them all on video. I teach them how to calculate seller's discretionary earnings, what is an add back to begin with, what's an appropriate add back, what's not an appropriate add back. I teach them about debt service coverage ratio, where we need to be to make sure that the market multiple is in line with making a deal bankable. And my very first question when I meet with potential sellers, I still meet with them in person. I'm not trying to replace that at all, is tell me what your business is worth. And now it's change the dynamics because it's no longer my opinion versus their opinion. I've given them a simple math formula and I've given them the tools and the education where they're now telling me what their business is worth based on going through the process with me. And then I'm simply there just to make sure that they did the math right. Now, what's happened with that conversation is they might not like the value. Nothing can change that, but they can now admit that they're not ready to sell. The business
Yep.
isn't worth what they need to sell it for, rather than my opinion. Say this guy that they don't know is telling me my business is worth less than it is. I'm going to go find another business broker. It's
Yep.
changed that because now it's a matter of here's what their business is worth. Can I help them? Or maybe their business isn't quite ready to sell. Here's what, and then our conversation is okay, here's what you need to do to increase the value. Here's how much you need to grow the business. And they call me a year or two later when they're ready because no other business broker is giving them that
Yep.
education and that content to really help them understand what any of this means and how it impacts their valuation.
And I tell you, Trent, I've talked to you last couple of years about these videos that you do, and I think it's a great idea. And it's one of those things I keep telling myself, I got to do this. I got to do this. And it is my goal by the summer of 2026 to have those videos in place. And it's not going to take me that long. I don't know why I keep
Okay, I'm
putting
going
it
to
off.
come
I'm so
chase you
busy.
down. If you don't
I,
have
I,
these done,
you do, and whack me over the head if I don't have them done. But when you were talking about those videos, you were talking about you talked to them about ad backs and you talked to them about the difference between discretionary earnings and EBITDA. And you mentioned a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to repeat it, but is that one big video of the ones you just mentioned, or are you doing short videos so that they can easily digest it? Or do you just do one longer video? And how
yeah,
long are these videos?
yeah, it's a good question. It's on the sell side, it's one longer video. I give them the resource of where they can go to pull market multiples for their industry. I've created now using AI. I've now in below that video education, there's now an I used AI to create a valuation calculator that can help them pull their market multiple, looks it up for them based on their industry, based on their size, based on a certain other characteristics. They plug in some figures and they have a really good output, a bell range, high to low, median from a sales price. And so that's a longer video on the sell side. Then there's some follow-up videos to just make sure that they really grasp the concept and make sure before the appointment, when I send out reminders, did they make sure to watch the video and do their quote unquote homework before I show up? Now, on the buy side, which we didn't necessarily talk a lot about, they're shorter videos. I get every single buyer that comes in, and I deal with smaller listings. Certainly, I'm happy to go bigger, but a lot of my deals are smaller, under $3 million, certainly. But on the buy side, they're shorter videos, but the buy side gets a video every single step of the way, same as the sell side, every single step of the way. And so let me give you just a general outline on the buy side. Instantly, when they inquire about a listing, they get an email from me thanking them for the inquiry, as well as a text message from me letting them know I got their inquiry. And there's a video, again, an educational video explaining what an NDA is, why it's important, what they should expect. After they sign it, I explain what happens. After they sign it, technology then processes it automatically for me. I should be careful. I make it so it doesn't seem too automated. It waits 3 or 4 minutes after it signs. And then they get a message saying, hey, this is Trent's assistant. Just wanted to let you know I'm processing your NDA. While I'm processing it, here's another video explaining what it happens next. I'll be sending the executive summary, what to look for in the executive summary, how valuations work, what SDE is, how market multiples work. If they're interested, what they need to do next. If they're interested in the sim, which I track how long someone's been watching it, I track how long someone watched the seller interview, then they get another video following up as to what they can do to prepare to have a meeting with me or to prepare to have a meeting with the seller. And so I know there's a lot there. We can unpack as much as you
Yeah.
want there, but the point is, every single step of the way on the buy side or on the sell side, there is a video educating them. And I do the same thing for no matter what the size of the business is. So sometimes I have private equity groups that I work with. And guess what? They don't need a video explaining what an NDA is. But I've never once had a private equity group say, I'm offended. You send me a
Yeah.
video on what an NDA is. Rather, I have the opposite all the time. Say, literally weekly. No one is doing this. We appreciate it. We appreciate the level of detail. We appreciate the understanding your process, what happens next. It's just a total game changer for me.
And Chad, I want to make this clear to the people that are listening. When you say that somebody sends over they sign the NDA and it comes back and then your video waits, it waits 4 minutes and the email goes out, you get a text message and all that. You're explaining that nobody from you nor anybody in your team is actually physically sending that email and
All
that text
automated.
message, right? It's all automated, correct?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And how long are the average videos
Probably 2 to 4 or 5 minutes.
for the
And
buyer
here's
side?
here yeah, for the buy side. It
What?
doesn't have to be long. It's not most people aren't asking for 10, 15-minute education. They just wanna know, what stage am I at now? What can I expect? What can I expect if I wanna take the next
Mhm.
step? And why is it important? How can I prepare for the next step? That really only takes 2 or 3 minutes for each video. And here's the thing where I think a lot of business brokers get caught up, or just people in general. They get afraid to get on camera and just do it. And you might comment on this, Jim. Why haven't you done the videos yet? Because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. I feel like I'm not good on camera. Guess what? I feel
Yeah.
those same things. My videos are not great. They're boring. I'm probably monotone. I'm not great on camera. But here's the thing. Buyers and sellers may not you could always make a better, higher quality production video, and and no one will really complain about the quality, but what they can't dispute is a broker who doesn't do videos to begin with at all. Something is
Right.
better than nothing, even if it's not the best production ever. You just do it.
And you are not using high production. You didn't hire a video company. You're just using your phone or a webcam or
Every
something
single
like,
video
right?
I've done is sitting in front of this camera, or I set up a little tripod on my phone and stand in front of my bookshelf.
And it's not highly edited or anything either, right?
No, and let's comment on that because now I started doing all these videos before AI was out, which is how important it is. But now that AI is out, there are some AI programs that can make editing so easy. It's literally just a click of a button. And we can talk about that if you want to, but I don't have to. I used to just send it to Upwork and say, clean up my retakes, clean up my ums and my ahs, put in some motion graphics in there to just make sure it wasn't them looking at me talking as a talking head only. You can now do that for pennies on the dollar with some AI programs. And that's primarily what I use now for my social media post is I run it through AI programs and I don't have to use a professional editor for anything at this point.
I got to tell you, I just hired a marketing company and they're doing great. The commercials that they have are done by AI. And it's amazing. You can tell it's AI, but it looks so real and it's such high quality, which is just amazing. It didn't cost that much. That longer video that you do for the sellers where you're describing the ad backs and the EBITDA versus discretionaries, you're walking through them, the pricing strategies and things like that. How long is that video? I know the other ones are 2 to 4 minutes. You're trying to keep it small and digest it, but that video seems like it's got to be a pretty long video.
Longer for sure.
Longer.
But and to be honest with you, it's been years ago that I filmed it, and I don't necessarily watch it or check in on
Yeah.
it. If I had to guess, it's probably 12 to 14 minutes, that general length. You just don't have to go into that level of
Right.
detail. We're not teaching them valuation 101
Right.
here. We're just giving them some basics of it. That's all people need.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I don't want to do, and it's never good. I don't want to get into what CRM, like you said, I don't want to get into what CRM's good and which one's the bad and what are preferences there and that type of thing, because I think everything kind of fits what people's needs are. But
Yeah.
I would want to ask you, what are you using? Because I think the brokers out there know what CRMs are available and they have to explore those on their see what's best for their needs. But something like when you were saying that you can track how long somebody's watched the video, can you name a couple the apps that you use for that? Because that may not be as familiar to brokers.
Yeah. And let me just make a comment on why that's so important. So I do, and we can talk more about this if you want, Jim. Any questions you want on this? I almost do not take a new listing now unless I set up a seller interview. And we can talk about why that's so important and how I use it. But I almost don't take a listing without the seller, even though I may be in Las Vegas and they are in Las Vegas, and we could just meet. I don't even do that unless they can get on Zoom and do an entire seller interview meeting with me. And when it comes to buyer preparation,
Wait, I'm sorry. I want to pause on that because I know what you're talking about. You're talking about after you list the business for sale, you're gonna interview them by video. You're gonna embed it into the SIM. Is that what you're talking about?
it's not after I list the business for sale. It's what drives the business listing to begin
Really?
with. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So you do it beforehand. You do the live video before. I'm not the
Yeah,
live
no,
video,
I'll
but
tell you why it's so important is because I use AI, one, to put the entire transcript of the questions and answers based on the industry of the business I'm listing.
Mm,
I'm a generalist, which means I don't necessarily know every single question of every single industry, but I'll tell you what, AI knows a whole lot more than I do. And so I have a specific prompt that I use that will research the company that I'm interviewing, scrape their website, do competitor research, and it puts together a list of 25 questions that I need to ask the seller before I take it to market. This is often my second meeting with them. My first meeting is the valuation. My second meeting, I'm already doing the interview with them. And
wow.
AI then transcribes that entire interview for me. And here's where it gets so important, so efficient. On average, it's taking me 12 minutes to build an entire executive summary because I use AI to transcribe that entire seller interview. And then I have prompts, and these prompts, we can talk about it if you want. These prompts are not like one or two sentences. I read somewhere that the average prompt that most people are using AI is 9 words. This is not the prompts we're talking about. In fact, anyone who's doing a 9 word prompt doesn't understand how to properly use AI. Some of my prompts are like 2 and 3 pages long,
Wow.
very, very detailed. But I use that entire transcript and I run that through a whole series of prompts. And from those prompts, based on the transcript, it autofills and completes my entire executive summary or the SIM. So now, when it's time to list the business, I'm sending the listing agreement and the pre-done entire executive summary, valuation, seller interview, with the seller interview embedded into it to the seller so they know instantly the day they're signing the listing agreement, they see what potential buyers will see and they see this 30, 40, 50 page executive summary SIM built, and it's all done through AI in literally a matter of minutes. And so I don't want to spend a bunch of time listing a business and then do a seller interview after the listing is done. It is what drives the listing. It takes me minutes to do listings now
Mm.
versus I know other brokers that spend days and then they outsource the design and that costs thousands and days more. At this point, new listings are a matter of minutes. It's some of the simplest, quickest thing that I do as a business broker. But back to answering your question, I use DocSend or Vimeo to track the seller interview. The seller interview is embedded into the SIM. And before a buyer can contact me, they have to have watched the seller interview. So my system tracks how long they watch the seller interview. And based on the dynamics of their watching time, it sends them one series of emails if they haven't watched it for very long. And I like joke around with them and make light of it. I said, hey, I noticed you only spent 4 minutes and 37 seconds on the executive summary. Was it that boring and you fell asleep, or did you just get distracted and you need to come back and look at this a little bit later in more detail? And
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick. Are you doing that Venmo, where you're having the video and you're tracking how long they're watching it? And the emails are automatically going out depending on how they watch it? Is that being done by Zapier or something
Yep,
like that? Or
it's all done through automation, Zapier or Make or N8N. Those are
Mm.
the three main options. So, for example, I'm using DocSend for this, but DocSend will then send to the CRM how many 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Now, if someone watched it for that long, I might send them a separate email and a separate text message saying, hey, I noticed you spend quite a bit of time, 8 minutes and 43 seconds on the SIM. Oh, obviously more than that, but you get the point. And then it's a separate conversation because it then says, it sounds like you've got some interest in this. What questions do you have? And so the dynamic message is based on the how much watch time, and it sends a different output or it sends a different message. One, to someone to go back and spend a little bit more time, or two, move on and let me know they're not interesting, or two, see, do we need to set up a time to talk? Do we need to connect? Do you have some questions about this listing? And so I don't let a buyer, back to my original point, I don't let a buyer get on my calendar until they've watched the entire seller interview, because I don't want them coming to me asking questions that we already addressed in the seller interview.
I take it when you're talking about the time that you watch, it's probably just as simple as for Zapier or whatever you're using, that it's if it's from 0 to 2 minutes, you do this, from 2 minutes to 5 minutes, you do this, kind of like that, five to
Yep.
10. Yeah, okay, good, good. And then how have you seen, what else have you seen or doing for to save time on in the process? Give us some more examples. I
Actually,
love what you do with
so
track.
since we're on this topic of videos, and you can comment because I know you've implemented some of the seller videos, what
I
you've seen
have.
the benefits of it. But one thing that I think is so important that most people don't realize is sellers get burned out. When you call them and you introduce them to 9, 10, 11 buyers, and they have to tell the same story over and over again. Why are you selling? Tell me about the employees. What do you do day to day? A lot of that information we all know is in the sim, the pitch deck. But most people don't spend time reading a 30, 40 page pitch deck and either retain it or even look at it all the pages to begin with. And so it's not only is it literally game changer for the amount of time it takes to do a new listing, but it's such a game changer for the seller because you're now only bringing to them people that know their full backstory. They know the history of the business. They've watched the seller interview. They then have gotten a video from me prior to the meeting with the seller, telling them, here's how you can prepare to have a successful buyer seller meeting. And I walk them through what they need to do, essentially more homework on their end to have a good, successful buyer seller meeting. How do they show up as a credible buyer in the eyes of a seller? And it changes so much again, the dynamics of the first buyer seller interaction. They're so much more prepared. And the sellers don't even know how much time I'm saving them because they don't know the old way of doing things or the way most business brokers
Right.
do it to really appreciate what's really happening in the system.
It's you first brought that idea to me about 3 years ago. You were doing it and you're like, "Hey, Jim, you should try it. It's really great." And I've been doing it for about 3 years now, and it has been a game changer for my practice. And I want to build upon what you say, and I can take a different approach to it. I think that people may read the SEM, they're gonna read the SEM, and they might understand or know why the answers to their questions, but I think there's certain questions that even if I tell them or my team tells them or they read about it, they still want to hear it from the seller directly. Things like, why are you selling? Do you think your employees will stay on post closing? What are you going to do after you sell? Just those basic questions. I
Yeah.
think they really want to hear it from the seller directly, even if they read it or heard it from somebody else or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, what I see happens is that it either when we do have a buyer seller interaction, a buyer seller phone call, and they're talking for the first time, it either cuts drastically down on how long that call is, or the questions are a lot more in depth. And either way, it's a win. And I think also, and I think this is a big thing. I think when somebody's buying a house or a piece of commercial real estate, they could care less who the buyer or who the seller is. But when they're
Yeah.
buying a business, they're going to do due diligence. And the bigger businesses, they're going to do quality of earnings reports. But even though all the due diligence they do, they're still going to take a little bit of a leap of faith. And I really believe that a buyer has to like and trust a seller in order to make an offer and close on the deal. And I
Yeah.
think the video does that as well. And I tell a seller, look, I don't need you to be a video star. I'm bringing you on as a client or yeah, I'm taking your listing on because you've got a good business, you're reasonable on price and your personality. I'm very selective on the businesses I take on. And one of them is because of their personality. And I say, you don't have to be a video star, just be who you are. And I want the buyer, when they're watching that, to see this person as a real person. Be like, I really like this person. I really trust this person. And I see that helps a lot. And then when they do get on the phone with the seller, they feel like they know them already. Oh, you know what I did recently? I don't know if you've ever done this. We recently had so many inquiries on a business, and we had so many fantastic buyers. And we were like, there's no way we're going to be able to get all these buyers on a phone call with the seller. Seller is extremely busy. So we asked them to shoot a 2-minute video themselves. and send them to us. And then we just sent a bunch of 2-minute videos to our seller, and the seller watched them. And along with that, with their financial net worth statement and their bio and things like that together, we went through and picked out the buyers that they wanted to speak to the
Yeah.
most. So
I do that often as well. When it's a listing that has a tremendous amount of buyers activities, we'll go to them and say, look, we've got so much to sort through. I need to know proof of funds if you haven't already, bank approval letter, and shoot a video as to why you're the best buyer candidate here. Why should we consider you versus anyone else? I love that concept and haven't done that as long. I've probably only been doing that for the next year. But I do want to bring up something that I think some potential brokers or whoever might be listening to this, some questions they might have that I think is really important here. And then I'll give you another like next level AI automation from these seller interviews. I guess 3 comments I make, and I'll just dump a whole bunch of information on you, and then you can give me follow-up questions. One concern because I brought this video stuff up before, trying to get brokers to do it. It just changes everything. And one concern I hear from a lot of them is, and they completely miss the point here. They talk about, man, that video, that's going to take more time. And then I got to edit it. And I don't know where to host it. And I don't know how to edit videos. And they miss the entire point. Spend no time editing these seller interviews. In fact, there's a couple of reasons I don't edit it. One, I'm trying to use this as efficiency, not add more to my to-do list. Two, I found, because I played around with it years ago, I found that editing them actually does a disservice
I
because
agree.
the buyer perspective, not only does it take more time from the broker, but from a buyer's perspective, they can tell it's edited, and they are in their mind, they're thinking, what did the broker and the seller just edit out that they don't want me to understand, or they don't want me to hear, or they don't want me to know? So I do no time at all. I just get on Zoom and I do the interview and I hit record and send, and I use that exactly. So this should take no extra time from the business broker standpoint. And I'll give you
Real quick, I just got to say, Chet, I totally agree with you. Now we do edit. We put in a little thing in the front, and we put a thing at the end, and we'll put lower thirds. Lower thirds, like the person's name and the company underneath. But the video itself, we don't edit at all either, for the exact reason you said. And so I think that's very important to tell the people out there that aren't doing that type of thing yet. Don't
yeah,
edit
and
the actual. You can put something in the front and the back and put the people's names down if you want. You don't have to.
yeah, I
And
never,
that's quick to do. That doesn't take any time at all.
yeah,
But do
I
not
never do
edit
that.
the video itself. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
go ahead.
never
I
do that.
interrupted you.
So I'll give you an interesting thing that happened just a little while ago. I just closed on an $800,000 transaction. The buyer went through my process, went through my video, went through everything, seller interview, and he said, your interview was so good. It answered all my questions. Can you just send me your asset purchase agreement and I'll fill it in and send you an offer? The very first time I talked with this buyer was after not only we had a full price asset purchase agreement signed, he opened escrow with the earnest money deposit. The very first time I talked to him was when I introduced the buyer to the seller to begin due diligence.
I got to tell you, I've experienced the same thing since I've done those buyer seller interviews. And I know you're talking about something else, but the seller interviews along with the sim, the buyers feel like they've gotten so much information that
Mhm.
I've seen so many buyers that they've had conversations with me and my team, but they never had a conversation with the seller, and they want to submit an offer. And for us, I respect what you do. For us, we just said we'll give the offer to the seller, but we're going to instruct the seller not to accept it until you guys have actually spoken. But I
Yeah.
think on the same point, I think it's great because the buyers do feel so much more confident and comfortable with the
Yeah.
information.
Now, here's where I would say you can take it to the next level. Obviously, we talked about having an initial seller interview when I take the listing to market, but every single buyer seller meeting that I do afterwards is recorded and transcribed. And here's where it gets really interesting because we can't always answer and ask every single question in the first interview. And the great thing about it is by the time you do have a buyer seller meeting, to your point, the questions are better, they're more in depth, which gives more information. And so I take the transcription from the seller interview initially, plus the transcription of every other buyer seller meeting. I use AI to create a repository of questions and answers that go into the executive summary. So the executive summary, the pitch deck, whatever we call it, gets better and better. It becomes a living, breathing document, not just a stale document like most brokers just put it up there and it's done. It gets better and better. But here's where I love AI technology. I have a chat bot created for every single deal, every single listing that I have. It's connected to my Gmail. So anytime a buyer sends me a list of questions about a particular listing, between my seller interview transcript and every other buyer seller interview transcript, I'm telling you, most every question is already answered. And so my AI bot reads their questions. It's all formatted, it's based on the right prompts and the instructions that it answers every single question. It retains their question and then it answers, use AI to summarize and find and give an answer. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm not drafting new emails, answering questions. I'm simply reviewing the draft that AI already created for me because it read their email, it summarized, it answered all their questions, and it created a draft for me. And I just hit send, or I make little minor edits if it missed something. It's not always perfect, but I can't even tell you how many hours a day it saves by allowing AI to do that.
Real quick, because not real quick, how are you hooking that up between the AI, getting it into your email and reading your SIM? What software are you using for that?
There's a bunch that you could do. I use ChatGPT for a lot of the bots and my repository for some of the information. I use N8N to connect to Gmail for different things. I use a program called Seraph because Seraph
Yeah, I use
and
Seraph too.
yeah, Seraph. And let me just say, none of this stuff works the day you hit connect. It's not magic. You have to train it. You have to take time. You have to teach it. I can't tell you how many hundreds of rules in what they call playbooks within Seraph because Seraph takes all of my emails and reads it and then puts a draft together. And yes, it gets a lot right from the beginning, but it a lot of times it just misses terribly. Man, I
Yeah,
would never say that. I would
right.
never recommend that. And
Right.
and so you don't just throw up your hands and say, "Oh, this doesn't work." You train it and you teach it and it becomes smarter and it becomes better. And then you run into another thing where, man, they just missed the mark totally. I'm not interested in setting up an appointment with that person. Then you train it again and you teach it a little bit more. And before you know it, you've got 80% there, and 80% is a whole lot better than nothing.
Yeah.
Trying to manually do all the emails.
Have you tried using Gemini? Do you use Gemini and ChatGPT, or you just use ChatGPT?
For the most part, I use chat because I have it trained so well,
Yeah.
and I have so many chatbots. Like I said, some of these are pages and pages long of prompts and instructions. So I've thought about do I switch over to Claude or any of these other things? I think they're all just fine. That's just where I happen to
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
training everything. And at this point, I look at it and think, man, I don't want to start over with something else.
Yeah, I get that. Then ChatGPT and Gemini is a Google thing for those that don't know. And I've been doing research on Gemini and ChatGPT because Gemini is like the new version just came out like a month ago. So it's like supposed to be next level stuff. But if you really look at the pros and cons of both of them, it's you could want to use both almost because they do really great stuff differently. And so they're
Yeah, I've
both
been using it for
both
like
really good tools.
images and other things, but content and other basic stuff, I still use chat. And,
I think
some of
chat
these
I think
I'll
chat's
bounce
better for
around.
content. I think chat's
Yeah.
good and Gemini's better for research stuff, but you're in Nevada
Yeah.
and I'm in Florida. And a couple months ago, we were both in Michigan at the Michigan Association of Business Brokers, and we had an opportunity to chat. And we, you said something in about 8 seconds that I just walked away. My mind was like blown. So when you talk, tell the audience, if you don't mind, how you come up with your prompts for ChatGPT. Because I think bet you a lot of people out there going, yeah, Trent probably spent like all this time and knowing you did probably spend a lot of time learning prompts, things like that. But if you tell the audience out there for the non-techie type, not so techie type people, a little bit of a secret, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I'm hoping this is what we talked about because I don't remember that conversation. But last night, and it was last night, my wife and I bought this kind of Blackstone, whatever, tabletop thing, grill thing. And we were trying to put it together following the instructions and the instructions that are just like put together in China. And don't really make sense. You can't really ask the instruction book to better explain itself or to help you understand it or explain it in a different way. But that's exactly what you can do with AI. So the way I create my prompts is I ask AI to help me create the prompts. And sometimes I'll have these conversations. I'll sometimes run to the gym to work out in the mornings and I'll turn on my chat conversation, like the actual audio. And sometimes I'll have these full on conversations back and forth with AI, creating prompts. And I treat it almost, I hate to say it, but like a friend, like a buddy, like I'm having a full on conversation with it. And I'll tell it, like, interview me, help me determine what are my real needs here, ask me a bunch of questions, and then decipher what's the real goal here, and then help me create a master prompt that I can use in the future. And it will then start to ask a bunch of questions. Obviously, I'll give it my initial set of instructions of what I'm trying to accomplish here,
Mhm.
but then I'll tell it, improve it, make it better, critique it. And then it will, and I call it double prompting. And this is where I think a lot of people just miss it. They put a prompt into AI and maybe they give it a little bit detail, hopefully like we talked about more than nine word prompts, but they give it a little bit more detail and then they use the output and that's it.
Mhm.
And I think they miss a big component of how intelligent AI is because AI can tell you how to become better at AI. So I'll go back and I'll say, okay, now take that output you just gave it and give and critique it. Where could it be better? Where is it confusing? Who, could you find fault in it? And I'll challenge it and I'll push back and say, make it better, do better, explain better, whatever it happens to be. And I'll
I
double
start
prompt.
I started doing that about a month ago, and it's amazing how you read something, you're like, "Yeah, that's pretty good." Then you ask it to do even better, and it comes back even better. I just started doing it a month ago. I totally agree with you. I think the interesting thing with ChatGPT is too that I think the viewers need to know this is that ChatGPT, it's a great system, but part of what they did when they were designing it was they want it to be very complimentary and very nice so that when users go on there and they're using ChatGPT, they're not offended by ChatGPT. So if you're using ChatGPT to critique something that you did, it's naturally going to want to come back and be positive about it. So you have to prompt ChatGPT to cut through all that. And I think there's actually a setting inside ChatGPT
Yeah.
somewhere that,
Yeah,
and
I
then
have.
you want ChatGPT, you want basically to tell it to give you the real feedback and not the nice stuff. Go ahead, Chat.
Yeah, you can personalize a lot of this. And so I have very specific instructions in the personal prompts to act as a certain person, act as a business broker. Here's what expertise areas I want you to focus on. Here's the tone. It's called word print. Every person, their own style, their own speaking has their unique word print. Everyone's gone through and they know, not as many people know the word print, but everyone knows the personality test. I have my personality test results built into ChatGPT so that it acts, it communicates. And I tell it specifically, I'm not looking for you to be complimentary. I want no nonsense, direct responses. Tell me where I'm wrong, challenge my thinking. And in fact, I have a certain prompting you can set up basic master prompts where before I have, in fact, I'll put in certain instructions, certain prompts, but I've told it, don't make any assumptions. Before you do any output, ask me any questions that are unclear. And so I don't just put in a prompt and then get an output. I get a series of questions of things that chat is assuming or things that I left out that I didn't even really think about because I just am going, sometimes I'm talking through prompts or I'm typing prompts and doing whatnot. And so you can become so much better at your prompts just by customizing it and tailoring it to make it somewhat sound like you or act like you.
Yeah, and I think for the brokers that are just playing with ChatGPT, I think where they miss it is they go to ChatGPT and that box comes up and they just start typing in there and they get that information. What you're doing is you've got little folders you're creating for each different thing that you're doing. So you actually bring that up and the prompt is already up there. So you don't have to copy and paste it every time or rewrite it every time. You just click it
Yeah.
and it's right there. And I think
Yeah.
a
I
lot
have,
of brokers don't realize that you have there's that
yeah.
capability.
I have dozens and dozens of chatbots, is what I call them. And every chatbot has a job. And within those instructions, that's where the pages of prompts and instruction come from. I'm not retyping 2 pages of instructions when it comes to doing market research for a seller interview and remembering that. That's just inefficiency at its highest. You use AI to help you create these master prompts, and then you critique it and make it better, and then look at the output, and then you make, and keep in mind, these are never perfect to begin with. It takes a number of times going back and forth and tweaking, editing, and looking at this output, and you're like, oh, you know what? It's good, but this could be better. So then go back and change your prompt, and then save all these prompts so that now every time I do a seller interview, I have a chat bot, and I simply just put in the industry, the location, and the size. And it has 2 pages of instruction where it knows exactly what to do, that I don't have to necessarily retype that over and over again.
Yeah, I think you made a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Trent, because I feel like all this stuff is, we're so busy as business brokers and we've got so much going on. And I think it's hard to step back and go, okay, I'm going to concentrate on creating some automations and some AI stuff. And you can't find the time to do it. And you do have to invest time into it, but the time you're going to save after it's done and it's working good is exponentially. It's just a lot of time you're saving, but you have to invest that time up front. You're going to get it back, what, hundredfold at that point. Every time you do that thing, you're not repeating it every time. I think that's
Yeah,
great.
it's a really good point. And I'll be honest, when it comes to technology, not just AI, but workflows and automations and CRM, you are going to be more inefficient, and you're going to be slower, and you're going to be worse than you were before. And you're
Right.
taking literally a step backwards. But once you do and you learn it and you start to tweak it and make edits, you slingshot yourself forward, to your point, 100 times fold. And so in my mind, I'm just not looking at the short term versus long term. It's going to be short term painful, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at long term. Why would you ever trade short term pain for so much more long term benefits? It just doesn't make any sense. But we're so in the moment, we can't think of, oh, you know what, I can't take a step backwards, not realizing that someone could do 3, 4 times the amount of efficiency in closings and listings if they just take a short term step backwards.
How are you using AI agents?
Agents
First,
and
can you say a little, I'm sorry, for those that don't know out there, can you explain real quick what an AI agent and how that is different from ChatGPT or just a regular Zap? I know
yeah,
Zapier has AI agents, but it's different than there's Zaps inside Zapier, or things like that.
like a chat bot is just input versus output. And an
Mhm.
AI agent has a little bit more flexibility and liberty as to what it can do. And I think probably the email is a little bit, I don't know if that would be considered an agent because it reads the emails and drafts it. I don't have it send it off. I still manually review it. There's I haven't got to the point where I'm using AI agents for calling or full on text conversations. I've tested it with the basic texting back and forth to set up meetings, looking at my
Yeah.
calendar availability versus their availability and scheduling something. I have tested it for phone calls, and I'll tell you a funny story, and this is probably where we're at. It was not good, but it is going to be good. It's coming along. The funny story is I had tested it having conversations, reaching out to potential business owners about a listing that I had. So I had a HVAC listing. I had tested this out. I got data on other HVAC listings, had it call and have a conversation asking. The thought was I was trying to automate this, have a conversation with other HVAC companies to see if they had any interest buying a potential competitor. And what I don't and I'd go back and listen to these calls, and one of them said, "No, I'm really not that interested." And the AI bot was, I guess, smart enough, maybe it was untrained, to ask him, "Are you interested in buying another business?" And the person actually said yes, and then
Wow.
proceeded to tell it about this flower shop in California that could be a great fit for them. Guess what? I don't have a flower shop. I did not have a flower shop listed in California. It was a AI hallucination, as they call it.
Oh,
I had no idea what it came from, and it just didn't sound right. It wasn't quite there. Now, I'm fully convinced it will get there, and it will probably get here a lot faster than we think, but it wasn't yet.
yeah. You know what? This is the thing. And I know you're talking about AI agents on a phone call and stuff. This goes with ChatGPT or anything. I heard of this about ChatGPT, and that is ChatGPT knows a lot about everything except for what you know about.
Yes.
Meaning that you got to really think about that. So when you're using ChatGPT and you're doing research, you're sitting there and you're thinking, my gosh, this knows so much about everything. But when you start asking it stuff about what you know, you realize it doesn't know it. So it
Yeah.
really doesn't know the other stuff. So you have to be careful. Like when you're using this, when you're using these ChatGPTs or Gemini, you have to know what you're talking about to get the best results back, because they will have hallucinations or they will say incorrect information. You just got to be really careful. And I think that's
Yeah.
what you got to keep in the back of your mind is, for those that are listening, that ChatGPT knows everything about everything except for what you know about.
Yeah, and you heard me say I'm not using AI to enhance me. So I always have to be back behind that just to confirm that it didn't say anything stupid, didn't say anything outright just incorrect, which it does. And so you still have to, but it can do. In fact, it's called the 10-80-10 prompt, 10-80-10 rule. You can spend about 10% of your time on the input. Output will be 80% AI. And then you got to put about 10% of your time cleaning it up.
Yeah, I know I do the 10% cleanup. I'm using ChatGPT to do the cleanup, but I know I'll instruct ChatGPT, this is the error, this is blah, 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 and I just have it redo it with those changes. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. What else? You got anything else with technology? We're running out of time, but is there anything else that you want to leave people with that has about AI, technology in general, secrets to your efficiency? Do you want to
You know,
touch on? Yeah, go ahead.
I think the real key here is not how I'm using it, it's how I'm thinking about it, because that changes. I'll give you an example. It wasn't until in fact, I'm ashamed of myself. I didn't think about this until just last week. All of these years, I've been, as you probably like you, Jim, I'm having conversations all day long with buyers and
Right.
sellers. I don't remember who I talked to and the details of who I talked to last week. And within my CRM, it does record all the phone calls and it transcribes those phone calls. But unless I take really good notes, it's too hard to go back quickly because sometimes booked back to back. I don't have time to go back and listen to recordings or hope I took good notes. And it had been a challenge to keep up and retain where I left off with every single conversation. And so I created a Zap between Go High Level, which is what I use now, that transcribes every phone call, sends the entire transcription to Chat GPT. I then have a bot that summarizes that and I tell it what I want it to look for. And the same goes with every Zoom call. Takes the transcription, summarizes it, and then posts it back to my CRM in the notes field. And so instantly, within every 30 seconds before every meeting, I just simply look at the notes and I can look at the nature of the business, what we talked about, the price range, the market multiples, who it outlines who has what action items. So I'm prepared for the call. And I don't take notes anymore now on my phone calls or my Zoom meetings because it's now all automated. So there's a million of these like little tricks and ideas and ways I'm using. But the point I'm making, I didn't think about that until last week. And the goal is not to say, here's how every single way I'm using AI and technology, because next week I'm going to think about something
Yep.
else.
Yep.
And
Yep.
next year I'm going to be better and I'm going to use different technology. The point I'm making is it's not how I'm using it now, it's how I'm thinking and about it and how I'm approaching it that people can implement it. And then they just customize it for how it works for them and their personality and their CRM that they're using and their system that they're using.
I think that's fantastic, Trent. I really appreciate you taking the time out and talk to us. I feel like we could have done another episode and talk a little bit more about the AI and technology, but I appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, that was fun. Appreciate it.
If if you're out there and you're watching these videos and you feel like you're getting anything out of it that helps you, and whether you're a business broker, a lender, an attorney, whatever, buyer, seller, I want to make sure you get the content. And at the same time, I'd love for you to help us, and you can help me and you by just liking, following us, and leaving a comment and sharing with somebody. Appreciate you joining us today. And until next time, have a great day.
No, that was great.
And let me stop that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was good. All right, that
did
was
you?
long. That was
Yeah, it
good.
was. Did you feel like we could have talked